But we look at a case like this and say we've got to learn from these things, and we've got to learn rapidly. And one of the things we have to learn is the value of standardized procedures. Well, say a lot of docs around the country, standardized procedures, there's a lot of debate on what is and what is not standard. Oh, really? A lot of debate, huh? Well, let's see. There's this thing, National Quality Forum. There are 34 best practices in there. CMS has already adopted those. And I have to say to some startled boards occasionally, you know, you're legally responsible for every single one of those. And it's expanding every year. That's just one source. And no jury is going to be impressed if you get in front of them and say, well, we didn't know that we were legally responsible, and that's why we didn't force our doctors, many of whom are on privilege, and really do their own thing. No, that won't wash anymore. And unfortunately, one of the problems is that we have not explained this sufficiently to our practitioners, and we also have not had the support of the boards. And I know many of you in this room are pained at the lack of ability of your boards to understand these things and give you the support you need. We've got to be very frank about this with boards. Boards are going to have to be more than just Don says boards on board. They are going to have to be in control. Charles Grassley, a little bit south of here in Washington, D.C., is determined to put Sarbanes-Oxley on the back of every medical board in the United States. Whether he'll succeed or not is not the point. I've come to believe he's right. I've come to believe that that's exactly what our boards need to be, is totally responsible for saying to the practitioners, you are the most valuable element in this field in terms of the medical decision maker, but you are one of a team. And the days of maverick action and you saying, well, I am the determining factor in my individual practice of what is a community standard, those are gone. And they have to be gone. We have to have the courage, financial courage too, as boards, to say, you either do it the way we know it needs to be done when we have that information. Now, only 16% of the things, as far as the figure I've come to believe in, can be reduced to best practices, but that 16% should not be arguable. And yet, all across the country, it is. And we don't have, unfortunately, the results with what the figures were that Sue was putting up. We don't have the results to say, well, we do have the best practice arena in the world. Matter of fact, we've been in denial for 20 years about this. Why have we sunk so far? Because, for one thing, we were going around saying, almost all of us, me too, we have the best health care system in the world. Oh, we've got some problems. Yes, it's a little more expensive, but now the numbers come in, and no, we don't have the best health care system in the world. And while no other country has it all under control either, we have learned one thing the hard way just in the last couple of years, and that is standardization and minimization of variables is one of the most important elements of what we need to do. And we're not doing it. And I'm not trying to assail you CMOs who have this battle all the time with your practitioners, every one of whom is willing and able and probably has in many instances. I don't think I've ever run into a CMO who hasn't had at least one doc in his face saying, if you say that again, I'm going to take my practice down the street to Our Lady of Pretty Good Outcomes. And I just won't be here anymore. We got to start calling those bluffs. By the way, standardization and minimization of variables is what led us to this. Now, some of you have heard me talk about this before. This is about a year and a half ago, right here in New York. And obviously, you all know that Sully Sullenberger, who I've now had the privilege to meet, really nice guy, excellent, excellent man. And he's getting involved in healthcare, as a matter of fact, with Dennis Quaid and Dr. Charles Denham, and beginning to talk about some of the things that need to be talked about. And one of them, in his case, is how they managed to do this. By the way, I'm not sure you know that this is what really happened. First class got the rafts. And it was the guys in coach standing on the wings that you saw. You might want to keep that in mind next time you book U.S. Airways. Sully, of course, is the guy who we have all lionized. We kind of forgot Jeff Skiles, the first officer. They did it as a team. He's going to be the first to tell you that. Just like the captain of United 232 20 years ago, Al Haynes, in 1989, who crashed in Sioux City, saved 2/3 of his passengers. Anytime you meet Al, and Al's still around, he's up in years now, wonderful individual, and you say, you did a good job, he's going to say exactly what Sully says. No, I didn't. We did, as a team. If there hadn't been a team, I wouldn't be here. In this particular instance, what happened was standardization. What happened was the brilliance of minimization of variables had led us over time, not because we're smarter in aviation, because we're sure not. We had to kill thousands of people and thousands of us and our passengers to get to the point of understanding some of these things about human systems, about why humans fail, how we fail, about how to get them to put standard procedures in place. But as we learned that, one of the things that we learned was that you don't need to reinvent the wheel. I mean, this is the basis of ventilator-associated pneumonia prevention. If you do the things that we know are necessary, you end up with zero. Big hospital system, southern Florida. My wife and I worked with them about a year and a half ago. They told us the tale of having a massive, massive fight with their docs over getting the IHI, VAPs, and the procedures in place. Finally, they drew the line. Even the board helped with this and said, guys, if you're going to practice here, this is what we're going to do. So reluctantly, all the docs got together who were associated with that ICU, and they signed off on their version of these procedures. And to this day, they have had zero ventilator-associated pneumonia incidents, and before that, they were averaging between 6 and 8 a quarter. I mean, there are stories like this all over the place. You've probably got your own. In aviation, we learned that there are certain things that are best practices. We learned this a long ago, but we didn't know how to talk about it in those terms, in medical terms, but we certainly understood that. If on a dark and stormy night going into Juneau, Alaska, I've got a first officer who leans over to me and says, John, I know you're the captain. I know it's your decision, but the company tells me I should tell you my opinion professionally, and I really think it would be a lot quieter, and the company would be happier if on this next approach we used the landing gear. But I know it's your choice. See, that's a best practice. And we kind of put that one to bed a long time ago, and yet there are still people who would practice aviation. We lost one of them, quite frankly, the other day. Well, the captain who flew the airplane that we lost, the Senator Ted Stevens, and several other people, and several fortunately survived, was an Alaska Airlines captain, known well to all of us. Nice guy, but one guy who simply refused to fly by the book when the book began to get in the way. We let him too often push limits. Unfortunately, he never killed anybody at Alaska Airlines, but this was probably a result of pushing limits. He was well known for it. There aren't many like that left in commercial aviation, but we do have a few. But what happened here? Let me reprise it. You all know, of course, they hit the geese, and they went through Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's 5 stages of denial in about 4.3 seconds. They realized they weren't going to get the engines back. They turned the airplane towards the Hudson. The captain and Jeff Skiles, the first officer, immediately realized that they had only a finite amount of energy, and they even mentioned the fact that they might be in the river. But across the river, they had this siren song of a strip of concrete called Teterboro calling to them. That's where a pilot wants to go. You want to go to concrete. Unless you've got a float plane, you do not want to go in the water. And as they've got about 15 seconds maximum to make this decision. If we had not reduced the variables in what they had to face, if we had not reduced it to procedures, they would have made another decision. Here's what I mean by that. They had a choice, go into the river or glide to Teterboro. Now, there is a procedure for putting it in the river. It doesn't say how to glide to the Hudson. It does say ditching an airplane. I'm always asked, can you land this airplane in the water? Yeah, once. Only once. And there's a procedure in the manual, in the Airbus A320 manual, and every other large airplane manual that tells you exactly how to do it. Read it once, you'll never forget it. You do it with the gear up, you do it with a certain flap setting, a certain airspeed for each type of airplane, and you don't need to reinvent this.